What if I told you that many of the foods in your kitchen, many of which you may believe are healthy, aren't actually food at all? What if they're better described as industrially formulated edible substances made with profits in mind, not your health? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a term that you've likely heard thrown around in the media lately: ultra-processed foods. And if you're anything like me, what you learn might change how you look at your grocery list forever. So let's get right into it. The word processed can actually be a little bit misleading. After all, isn't cheese processed? Canned tuna. It didn't come like that, it's gone through some processing. This ambiguity is something that the food industry often leverages to dismiss the valid health concerns associated with ultra-processed foods. To cut through the confusion, public health scientists in Brazil developed a system called NOVA to classify foods into 4 groups depending on the level of processing that they've undergone. Group 1 is unprocessed or minimally processed foods. Think fruits, vegetables, meat, eggs, things that our ancestors would recognize as food. Group 2 is processed culinary ingredients, things we use to cook, like oil, butter, salt, honey. Group 3 is processed foods. These are combinations of Group 1 and Group 2 foods. Think simple, traditionally made bread, cheese, canned vegetables, canned tuna. These are generally fine to consume, and they typically contain Group 1 foods in a form that's intact or recognizable. This brings us to Group 4, which is ultra-processed foods. These are industrial formulations that actually shouldn't even be referred to as food at all. The key identifier of ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, isn't the fact that they've undergone processing. Rather, it's the ingredients that they contain. UPFs contain substances that you would never find in a home kitchen. Things like protein isolates, emulsifiers, artificial flavors, and thickeners. As a simple rule of thumb, Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, the author of Ultra-Processed People, says that if it's wrapped in plastic and it has at least one substance that you wouldn't find in a traditional home kitchen, then it's UPF. So why are UPFs a problem? Because they've been engineered to be overconsumed. They've literally been scientifically formulated to be intensely rewarding and almost impossible to stop eating. I mean, we've all been there. You say that you're only going to have 1 or 2 cookies or only a handful of chips, and the next thing that you know, you've consumed the entire package. This overconsumption isn't necessarily a lack of discipline on your part. It's the deliberate outcome of scientists' manipulation of 4 key levers, which are used to bypass our natural bodily systems and to create overconsumption and therefore higher levels of purchasing of UPFs. By understanding these core mechanisms, it becomes clear that the irresistible nature of these foods is a core design feature that ensures that companies that sell them will maximize their profits. Let's break down the 4 key levers that scientists have manipulated in order to create these irresistible ultra-processed foods. First is the Bliss Point, or the perfect point at which the levels of salt, fat, and sugar are balanced to create a hyper-palatable food that is pleasurable without creating too much of the feeling of fullness that would signal your body to stop eating. Scientists have identified 3 combinations of these nutrients that reliably create hyperpalatability. The first is fat and sodium. Think processed meats, pizza, and hot dogs. The second are fat and simple sugars, things like cakes, ice cream, and cookies. The third is carbohydrates and sodium. Think pretzels, chips, crackers. The hyperpalatability of these foods is due to this synergistic interaction between the ingredients, which results in an artificially increased palatability in a way that any of the ingredients on their own could not achieve in nature. It is inherently unnatural. The second lever is sensation. Scientists have found that contrasting textures, which is really just a term for putting textures that oppose one another close together, are something that the brain finds highly stimulating and rewarding. Common examples include the crunchy shell of an Oreo with its soft, creamy filling, the crispy crust of a pizza with its gooey cheese, or the crunchy exterior of a French fry with that satisfying, fluffy interior. The constant novelty of these opposing textures within a single food item prevents the brain's natural boredom mechanism from kicking in, and this short circuits the signals that would normally tell you to stop eating. You can imagine that you would grow bored of the texture or sensation of eating group 1 foods like an apple or a handful of unsalted almonds much faster than you would something that's a UPF. The third lever is speed. Scientists have engineered foods to dissolve almost instantly in your mouth. Think cotton candy or puffed corn snacks. Because the food melts down so rapidly, it provides the illusion to your brain that there are little to no calories, tricking the brain into overconsumption. UPFs tend to be softer and require minimal chewing as well. This shortens orosensory exposure time, which bypasses the body's crucial first stage of signaling satiety that then eventually causes you to stop eating when you're full. This process is normally triggered by the action of chewing food. Essentially, the combination of UPFs being highly calorically dense and very easy to consume rapidly results in consumers eating a much higher amount of calories in a shorter amount of time before your brain even has the chance to register that you're full. The fourth lever is supercharged flavors. UPFs often contain flavor enhancers. These are industrial additives like monosodium glutamate, or MSG, something that adds to the existing flavor of the UPF rather than contributing its own novel flavor. This makes the taste of the food unnaturally potent. This is an intentional hijacking of your brain, which has evolved eating real, whole, natural foods. Artificial, natural, and synthetic flavors are often used as well. These are chemical compounds created in a lab to create intense and consistent flavor profiles across the food. The key point here is that the flavor does not match up with the nutrients that the UPF provides. This intentional break between a food's flavor and its nutritional value confuses your brain and actually causes real implications. You can imagine that if you're drinking an artificially sweetened beverage that has little to no calories, the first step that your brain is going to go through is processing the taste. So it receives that sweet taste on your tongue, and it therefore anticipates that sugar, carbohydrates, are coming. The nutrients that your body receives don't align with what your brain anticipated and signaled to your body that it was going to receive. And this has real implications for your gut health, as well as your body's hormonal response. I won't dive into the nuances of all of this as it's still being researched and I could spend an entire video discussing it. But the point remains, your brain is tricked by the artificial flavors, and that has a real response on downstream bodily physical mechanisms. All of these flavor enhancers also reduce palatability of real natural whole foods because you're being constantly inundated with these exciting textures and flavors. Natural foods may become more bland or unsatisfying, creating this cycle of UPF craving and consumption. This concept that UPFs have been intentionally engineered to be overconsumed isn't just some theory. A randomized control trial at the NIH found that when 2 different groups of people, one who were fed a UPF diet and one who were fed whole foods diet, they were given unlimited access to food. And those on the UPF diet consumed on average 500 more calories per day, and subsequently they gained weight. Their brains were being driven to overconsume. The ultra-processed food, if you can even call it food, is the problem here. And the damage goes far beyond weight gain. A body of scientific research has emerged demonstrating a link between the consumption of ultra-processed food and metabolic diseases. We're talking about an increased risk of things like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, and other metabolic disorders. If you've made it this far in the video, then I'm confident that you want to take back control over your food and your health. The first step to taking back control is awareness. So please, I urge you to share what you've learned in this video with your friends and families. Read the sources that I've linked down below. Share your own sources and let's help fill these knowledge gaps. And here's another challenge. Start reading ingredient labels. I'd encourage you to go to your kitchen right now and take a look at a packaged item. Read the ingredients. Find one food that you're surprised to learn is a UPF. Share what you find in the comments below, and let's spread awareness together. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and in doing so, you'll enable me to continue to create videos like this in the future.